Okay, so let's start with the first module, and in this module we are trying to understand, and this is a basically you can say overall picture of your DevOps. Okay, and we are going to understand about what kind of project we should have, how you can design a project, how we can go ahead and manage our Azure boards and other things. Okay, so in this module we are going to look at the how we can go ahead and plan. So project planning, team structuring, Mig- also we'll look at the migrating the application to the DevOps. So that's what we are looking at here. Okay, so if you look at something called what is DevOps, so this is the first thing which is available here. So DevOps, we say that this is not only talking about a specific tool. DevOps is a complete union of your people, process, and products. So that's what we say, that this is the completely union of, we should have a people, we should have good people into the team. We should be putting those process automatically, or deploying the application automatically, and the products which we going to deliver to the client. Okay, so we are doing a continuous integration for your coding, and doing the delivery for your client. Okay, so basically what you are going to do, your developer is doing continuously doing a development for you. They are going to do checking the code into the system. They are going to develop our application. So what they are going to do, they are going to build application. Okay, so first of all the planning has to be in the place. After the planning, the application has to be built, and that has to be continuously integrated. It has to be deployed. Okay, and then you are going to operate, means monitoring and those things which you are going to do, and then finally the feedback comes. So this is what DevOps is comes, and it's a completely collaboration between the different team which we are looking into the DevOps cycle. So when you're looking at the DevOps, okay, so DevOps always talks about the improving the value for the application. So how you can go ahead and improve the value to the client when you are going to implement a DevOps. So always when we say that I want to implement a DevOps, why you want to implement a DevOps? Because you want to do some process which need to be automated. You want to reduce the bugs. You want to reduce something called you can say that desired state configuration, or you want to set those configuration available for the system, so that with the minimum downtime or minimum time you will be able to replicate the environment immediately. Okay, so that's what we are looking at to implement a DevOps. Okay, so in the DevOps journey, we are looking at something called continuous integration. We are going to look at the continuous delivery. We are going to look for the version controlling, agile and lean methodology, monitoring and logging. We are looking at the Azure cloud. We are looking at the infrastructure. We'll talk about the microservices architecture as well, how you can fit in your microservice architecture with your source control. And then we'll look at the container. Okay, and then what we are going to look for, and always we are going to focus on the DevOps as a first option for you. Okay, so these are the few topics which we are going to talk about in this DevOps journey. So if you look and at the separating your team, so how you can go ahead and design your team, how you can go ahead and deliver the application. So when we talk about something called DevOps, okay, so DevOps and Agile, I told you that works hand to hand always. That need to be work together in order to implement into the organization. So you are, whenever you are going to implement a DevOps, you are going to implement something called agile process as well for your company. And you always look for the quicker and shorter life cycle. What do you mean by quicker and shorter life cycle? Means if I want to deploy application, so I should be able to build and deploy those application immediately without having a longer time, because whatever in the earlier, if you are a developer, what when you are going to build application, it is going to take a time. Then you provide a exe, you give a deployment steps to the your production team. A production team does a deployment. He may does some thing wrong, he doesn't follow those documents properly. That kind of challenges which you face into the older kind of deployment. Okay, now if you are using a DevOps, once you implement a framework, you can go ahead and just hit a button and which can go ahead and deploy immediately into your environment. So that's what we are looking from the DevOps perspective. Okay, so when we are creating a team, so basically we are going to talk about the team now. So when we are creating a team, in the team you have a different kind of people in a team. Okay, so you have some people who are canary kind of people. Canary means those who want to do a new work for you, new stuff, new research for you. Some people wanted to do a repetitive task. Okay, so you have to identify a people and you have to think about the people, how they can be fit in into your process. So canary kind of people who want to do a new development or new research, you use them to develop an application or do a research for your organization. Few people who is doing a interested in doing a repetitive kind of task, you are going to put those resources into the same stuff which keep on monitoring to your application. Okay, so when you are moving from the non DevOps to DevOps practice, okay, we face some challenges. Okay, so what are the challenges we face actually? uh, uh, we have to go into the automation. Okay, we can't go automate everything in one day. We have to take those into the you can say into the different cycles. Okay, so into the different pieces you have to take. So we'll have a subject matter expert or your architect who is going to design the application, and he's going to categorize those application, how you can go ahead and they are going to analyze, they are going to prioritize those application based on the work which you want to do. So you have to design a team, you need to just focus on the work of the team, what kind of work they can do, and then you are going to put those works accordingly onto the team. So next thing, defining a shared goal. What do you mean by defining a shared goal? Like everything, if you are going to implement, okay, so whatever we are going to implement, basically we always look for the if you say that I want to implement a DevOps, means somewhere you want to looking to reduce a bug, you're looking for a reduce up time, or looking for to reduce something called unplanned maintenance, and those other metrics you always look at that. Okay, so being your DevOps engineer and DevOps architect, you need to analyze a different tool. Okay, so why only we have to use Azure DevOps? Why can't I use another tool which can go ahead and automate that process? What is the benefit of using the other tool, not using this tool, using the other tool? So you have to analyze the tool. You have to present a matrix to your manager or your client to convince them that okay, if I implement this strategy, I'm going to reduce this bug or unplanned maintenance into the system or into the project. So that kind of thing you have to analyze, measure, and then you have to present to the team if you want to implement those. Okay, so we have something called Azure boards. Azure boards is going to help you to plan those work, to assign the work, and manage a complete project life cycle into the Azure. Next thing, so whenever you are going to present to the client, or you are giving something a demo to the client that I wanted to implement or automate my manual process to the Azure DevOps process, then you have to define a goal. So that's what we call at a measurable goal. Okay, so if you have heard about the sprint, so Azure DevOps help you to plan a sprint. So basically we are going to do a sprint planning. Okay, so sprint planning means 2 weeks of a sprint which we are going to look for that, and we say that okay, in the 2 weeks we are going to do this work which I am going to complete. Okay, that you are going to define and you are going to measure your goal. Okay, and this is the timeline which I am going to complete. So everything need to be measured. Okay, it hours need to be assigned, and that hours you have to need to complete and give the work to the testing, and finally you deliver a product or a process, whatever you are going to develop. Okay, so let's suppose that I have to develop a project. Okay, so I have to develop a completely something called web application. Okay, so I can't say that web application can be developed in 15 days. Yeah, but a small module like login module, like a purchase module, like a shopping module, that can be developed in a 15 days or a 2 sprint or something. That you have to put into the sprint and plan the sprint accordingly, and then you deliver a project to the to the customer, and you look for the feedback for that sprint. Okay, so I have delivered this login module to you. Is it looks good for you? Are you happy with that? And then you finally move for the further processing with the project. So that's what we have to always look for the timeline. Now if you're looking for the project selection, okay, so we have two kind of project into the DevOps which we talk about, or the two kind of project which we can go ahead and define into your application. Okay, so this will come in your examination as well. They will ask you that what is the benefit of Greenfield, what is the benefit of Brownfield project. So these kind of questions will come. So if you're talking about the Greenfield, the first one, okay, so Greenfield talks about something called you are going to develop a project from the scratch. Okay, so you don't have something called you don't have a design, you don't have a code, you don't have any existing library. So completely you are going to do the work from the scratch. Means you are going to the client, you are asking for the requirement, you are gathering the requirement, and then you are going to design your completely project, and then you are going to deliver the project. So you don't have any background, you don't have, it's completely new project. If you're talking about the brownfield project, means you have some existence of your code already available. So how you can reutilize the existing code? Let's suppose that I have a telecom client, and one client is my Airtel, another client is Geo. So currently I'm dealing with the Airtel as of now, and tomorrow if Geo comes into my organization, and we get a project for the Geo, Geo also having a similar kind of requirement which Airtel has. So I can pull the code, existing design from the existing project, the brownfield project, and then I can go ahead and implement for the new project. Okay, so that's what I can do. So I have some other existence of the code, and I can reutilize the code into our project. Okay, so both the project having some advantage and disadvantage. If you're saying I want to go for the greenfield project, means you don't have any existing knowledge of the application. Everything has to be analyzed and need to be designed from the scratch. But in brownfield you have some existing, you can do the quick delivery. But the problem here is that if they are not using a new client is not using few of the module, but still I need to carry those codes with me, I need to write a test case for that, I need to carry those code, I need to get some old developer from the project. So that kind of thing, the old baggage which we are carrying, so always the old baggage, we called it as a technical depth for me, if we are not utilizing it properly into the new application. Okay, so these are the two kind of project which we always talk about into the greenfield and brownfield project. Okay, so same thing I talk about just now. So choosing a ground greenfield or brownfield, which project you can go ahead and choose. Okay, so greenfield looks like easier for me, but again you don't have to, or you don't have any existence of your application. Okay, so you have to go and design it from the scratch. But if you talk about the brownfield project, you can see here that's what it's saying, that it comes with the baggage. Okay, so you are getting a baggage of existing code, existing team, and that is causing you a technical depth. If you're not managing those code properly, if you're not going to remove the unnecessary code, if you're not writing a proper something called test cases and those things, then unnecessary you will be spending more on the maintenance of the existing application, which is not needing at all. Okay, so there is always disadvantage and advantage if we get it for the both the projects. Now, if you're going to talk about something called system of record and system of engagement, so what we talk about the system of record means this is giving you the actually accurate data, how much you have improved in terms of automation, in terms of your implementation of your application. So those we talk about in the system of record, and that you have to prove using the historical data. So earlier it was slow, it was taking more time, it was having so much of bug because of that, and then you have improved that, and that's you are going to prove using a system of record. System of engagement talks about something called POC or experiment work. Okay, so what are the things which you have sold using implementing of the DevOps or implementing the different tool. So that's you are going to talk about the system of engagement. Basically, you are looking at the POC or experiment for the solving existing problem, and you can go ahead and define those priority based what you want to implement. Okay. Now, if you're going to talk about something called something a canary, I just talk about the canary early adopters and the users. Okay, so there are the different staff into your organization, what kind of a staff you have or the team you have into your organization. So I talk about the canary. Okay, so canary is a people who does new things for you. Okay, so in the some team you'll have a person who is always going and trying to do experimental kind of work and trying to work on the beta releases kind of thing, and they go and explore the new tools for you. Okay, so that is the people who can give you the new opportunity or new coding standard or the work for your team. Okay, so they are basically going to explore the new things. Next, you have early adopters. Okay, so who works on the work which is done by the canary. So canary has developed a new thing, and the early adopters people can start working on the new things or the preview releases. Okay, so that's the early adopters does. Next is the third category, which we have the normal user or other staff, you can say. They are going to consume the product which is developed by the canary and implemented by the early adopters people. So this is kind of a daily activity which some user does. They just go and do the monitoring, or they just go and do the similar kind of work day to day. They don't want to do something called work on preview releases, or they don't want to do experimental work kind of thing. Okay, so these are the what you can see. So there are different type of staff which is available, and what are the things which you can go ahead and improve. Okay, so how you can go ahead and improve into your team or improve into your organization. Okay, so you can go ahead and gain early win, and you can go ahead and do something called small changes which is reasonable within the time frame. Basically, whenever you are going to release a product, you are always looking for the minimum product which can go ahead and execute or run into the application or into the organization. Okay, so whenever we are going to look for the DevOps, we always say that we wanted to implement, or what is the speed of deployment. Okay, what is the size of deployment, what is the frequency of the deployment. If we are going to do something or we are trying to deploy the application, so how frequently, how fast, and those things we'll be able to achieve using our DevOps. Okay, so we always look for the speed of deployment or the frequency of the deployment, and those things we always look for into the DevOps cycle. Okay, we need to learn from our organizational structure. Okay, or the policy, like how what is the frequency you are looking for the deployment and how that will come. Okay, Basically, you are going for the discussion with the architect, or you are going to discuss with your client, like when you want to get release the product. Are we going to do a weekly deployment? Are we going to do every 2 week deployment? Those things you have to talk here into this faster in outcome or a deployment speed. Okay, so always you are going to define these outcomes, and you are going to look for the date of the deployment, and that date comes from the less number of errors. So you have to go and find out, are we, when we are going to deploy those application, are we going to get a error frequently? Okay, so you are going to look for the efficiency of the application, you are going to look for the quality of the application, and then you are going to define the time or deployment frequency. As you know, some of the application in the Azure or other methodology, they are going to deploy a daily basis, or they are going to deploy the application very frequently into the organization. Okay, so how they are going to deploy? Basically, they are looking for the faster outcome, they are going to look for the customer ratio, or they are going to look for the errors in the deployment, so that they have reduced those things. Once you reduce those kind of things, you can go ahead and deploy or do a release daily basis. Okay, so you should look at those metrics. You have to look for the less number, less bug has to be happen, and then you have to your test cases has to pass. What is the percentage of test case you are going to pass? So those quality you have to look at that, and then you have to implement. So these are the few metrics we have to look at: the efficiency, quality, security, and the faster outcome. And the last one, if you see, it talks about the culture. Okay, so whenever we are implementing the DevOps, we doesn't talk only about the tools or the process. We are now also responsible for the people who is working with me. Okay, so whoever the people are working with me, I need to make the employee moral high. How I can make an employee moral high? So whoever is under me or reporting for me and working for me, being a project or being a developer, being a tester, or the other stuff. Okay, so being architect or being a manager, I need to take care for them. Okay, I can't go ahead and directly blame the person for the any work or anything. So we have to just investigate why the people are not focusing on the work. We have to look and understand the people. Okay, and if let's suppose that I have created a code. Okay, and code went to the till production or till testing stage, and some issue has happened over there. Okay, let's suppose that some loophole or the security flaws was there. I have not closed my object properly, which was causing a high utilization on the server. My manager can't come and blame directly on me. Okay, because what happened, a DevOps, when the DevOps, a developer develops a code. Okay, now the first thing comes your team lead or your architect, who is going to look for the code. Okay, so he is doing the code review. Okay, once the code review is done, you are going to write something called test cases. Okay, so unit test cases you are going to write. Then your tester comes in the picture, where tester does a testing for your application. Okay, once the testing of the application is done, basically your manager is going to review overall process. Okay, and then it is allowed to deploy into the any other environment. Okay, so basically it's everyone's responsibility, and everyone is you can say equally responsible for the delivery, or the, you can say, the to deployment of the application into the production environment. Okay, so you have to keep your team morale high to make sure that you get a highly retention rate for your organization or your team. Okay, so make sure they are not something blaming directly to them, and make sure they it has not repeatable in the future step. So that's what we do. We have a daily stand-up meeting. When we are going to implement a DevOps, we do a daily stand-up meeting. We discuss with the team. We try to ask that, do you have any problem, or with respect to your something called project or blockers you have. So those things we always discuss with the team, and we always look for the this culture to be implemented. Okay. Now, if you're looking at the team structure, so how you can design the team. So before designing the team, we need to understand what approach we are following currently. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the team now. Okay, so how you can go ahead and place your team. Before placing the team, we need to understand that what kind of model you are following. Okay, so earlier we used to follow the earlier we used to follow the waterfall approach. Okay, so waterfall approach, which gives you something kind of it doesn't work with the DevOps. It doesn't work with the agile methodology very well. Okay, it doesn't gel with the agile methodology, you can say. What happens in the waterfall model, you are going to take a requirement, you are going to define a requirement, you are going to analyze that, and you are going to develop, building and testing and delivering those products to the client. Okay, in the waterfall model, there is no place or no space for taking a new changes into the system. Okay, so once I start a development, if client asks, okay, I have a small changes which need to be done, I'll not be able to take those changes in between the development. Okay, so there is no space for the delta changes into the waterfall model. Okay, so what we have to do now, we are moving to the DevOps, and that's what I say, the DevOps and the Agile, which need to be worked together. Okay, so what is the benefit when we are going with the DevOps? So we are going to look at something called adaptive planning kind of thing. Okay, so if there is a new changes are coming, we can't say no to the new changes. We need to accept those changes. Being a agile, okay, being a DevOps, we need to accept those changes, and we can put those into the backlog, and you can prioritize those items later. If you don't have the bandwidth now, I can prioritize those later. I can put in the next sprint, I can design those. Okay, so those, that's what we always look for the agile methodology, and we always look for the short term outcome. So this is what you have to focus into the agile methodology here. So we are looking for the short term, we always look for the short delivery. We are not going to deliver a complete project, we are going to deliver a part of the project. Okay, and that part of the project has to be working module or working thing. Okay, so if I'm giving up something called if you talk about the WhatsApp kind of project. Okay, so I have to, if I have a requirement that you have to develop a WhatsApp kind of application, so are we going to develop a complete WhatsApp application and give it to the client? No, I can go ahead and give a chat feature first. Then I can add up a video calling. I can give a group calling. I can add some more features. I'm step by step. I don't have to deliver a complete product to the client. I can work in the sprint. Once the chat is developed, I can give it to the client. Okay, let it test, let it check, and then you accept some feedback. If that looks good, I can go ahead and implement other feature, or I can go ahead and enhance. Parallelly, other team can work on the enhancement of that, so that you get a feedback, you have a regular interaction with your client, and finally you can go ahead and deliver. Also, when we are talking about the agile term, so always we look for something called a failing early. So there is a term called a failing early is good in the agile methodology. Okay, so we do into the multiple iteration, and if there is something called my build, my release, or my test case is failing early, that's good for me, so that I have the enough time to fix those things. Okay, so you can look at the each iteration which we are going to test, and we are going to uh, deliver it to the client. So we always look for that, and we have to failing early is good in terms of a DevOps practice. And when we are going to deliver a product, just now I told you the example of the something called WhatsApp product. Okay, so we always going to release something called minimum viable product. Okay, so minimum viable product means a version of the product, or you are going to release a small product which is the working product, and the customer can use that product, and I can get a feedback out of that. Okay, so that's what I can go ahead and do using the agile methodology. So this is what talking about the 12 principle of agile methodology. Okay, so if you are going to talk about the different principle, so what are the principles? So if you look at this, they are actually talking about something called continuous delivery. They are talking about the viable software. So you can see that's what I told you just now. So continuous delivery is the one topic. Then you have something called viable product. What is the means of viable product? Means a small product which is a working product. Okay, you always accept a changes. So you are going to say, I welcome the changes. I'm not going to say that I'll not accept any of the changes. Okay, you should always deliver a software which is a working software. Okay, you always going to motivate the project. Okay, work throughout this project, so always you motivate the people, you and you have a face-to-face discussion. Okay, so face-to-face discussion means daily a stand-up meeting, or you should have a daily discussion with your team. Nowadays, because of pandemic, we don't have all the people available in office. Make sure you create a team meeting, have a video calling, try to understand their feelings, trying to understand and what how they are doing, is they facing any challenges. So there are things you have to look at into the face to face conversion and the discussion. You have to look at the measuring the progress, you have to look for the sustainable growth. Okay, you have to look for the technical challenges and the good design, you have to look at that. Okay, you have to make it simple, you need to self organize team, so your team should be self organized, and then you have to look for the more effective outcome for that. So just to remember from this point of view, what are the things? You should be self organized, you should be continuously going to improve. Okay, few things to remember, just I'm mentioning the few topics. You should be self-organized, you should be continuously going to improve, you should have a proper strategy for your DevOps planning, you should have something called software delivery frequency, which need to define that I am going to deliver a product in every 1 month or 15 days. You have to always look for the shorter cycle, and shorter cycle again depends on the how many bugs it is coming into your system, how to improve the bugs and increase the or reduce the shorter cycle, so that you will be able to release the product easily to the customer. Okay, you have to motivate the people, so you should have motivated people inside that into your team, and you have to always do the welcoming the changes, that whatever the changes comes from the client. So that's what we talk about the agile methodology. Now if you look at this diagram talks about something called a vertical team and the horizontal team. Okay, so if you see the first option of horizontal team, what is this horizontal team means? Horizontal team means when you're talking about the something called microservices architecture. Okay, so if your application are microservices architecture or following the agile methodology, you're not following the waterfall approach, then you can have a vertical team in the place. Okay, now what you can do, if you're talking about the microservices, you can go ahead and organize your team as a vertical team planning. Okay, horizontal team is for some, you can say, the monolithic kind of application you have. Okay, and something called you are writing a waterfall model design, and those things that the your team structure fits into the horizontal team structure. What do you mean by horizontal? If you look at this horizontal team structure, you have to design a team which is a UI team or front end team, your middleware team, and the database layer team. So these teams are completely separate and working independently with each other. Okay, means UI team is responsible is basically for all the UIs like email UI, voice UI, and TV UI. But if I have any issue with the database layer, I need to go to the database team and I have to ask the support from the database team. So that's what it is called as a horizontal team. But if you are in the vertical team, basically one team is going to handle a complete project for me. So this is the email project, and that email project, but the one team is going to handle something called UI as well, your service layer and the database layer. So I can go to the one team, and one team can do the collaboration between each other, and they can go ahead and solve the problem faster instead of going to the different team and the different approach. Okay, so you have all the team and you can achieve the faster outcome using a vertical team planning. So that is the benefit which you can go ahead and achieve using a vertical team. This is also called as something called, if you search for L-shaped or T-shaped team. Okay, L-shaped is your vertical team and T-shaped is your horizontal team. So that's what it is called as in the agile methodology, that is called as. Okay, so these are the so ideal DevOps member. Who was the ideal DevOps member? Like, they have to think, they have to look for the changes, always you have to look for the innovation. So these are the few lines which is mentioned for the who can be fit into the DevOps, can be a DevOps team member. Now if you look for the something called whenever you are moving towards the agile methodology, okay, so your organization doesn't have a agile framework, or they are going to implement a DevOps first time into your organization, what they are basically going to do, they are going to hire a mentor. Okay, so whenever the company is moving towards the agile or they are implementing a DevOps first time, they basically hire a person who is good into the DevOps and the agile framework. Okay, so they are going to mentor your team. Okay, and they are going to teach the team how you can go ahead and do the processing, and how they are going to teach the team how you can go ahead and implement the lean methodology and the scrum methodology for you. Okay, so basically a mentor will be hired by your company, and who is going to train the all the team, and they are going to or teach about the different life cycle and the planning, how you can go ahead and do that. So this is what it is talks about these slides. And coach will be basically expert into those things. They will be having a project management experience, they will be having agile experience, and they will be helping you in terms of that. Okay, also other than that, you will be having something called a scrum master. So there is a scrum master. So if you talk about the agile methodology hierarchy, you have someone, a coach. Okay, so the agile coach, then you have something called project manager from the client side, then you have a scrum master. So a scrum master is basically responsible for talking to your team. They are going to assign a work to the team. They are basically going to clear the obstacle, like communicating with a different team. So there are multiple people who is part of the agile process, and they are going to help you in terms of implementing the or understanding the approach and designing the application for you. Now if you are going to look at this model, okay, so when you are going to look for the moving from the old waterfall model to the agile way, okay, so we need to look for these three topics. Okay, so first is something called cultural change. What do you mean by cultural change? Basically you are looking for the better communication with the application, with the organization, and that's what it talks about the cultural change. Means you should have a better coordination between the team, better coordination between the team members. You should have a stand-up meeting. You should respect each other, and that's what it is giving you the better outcome for your project. Also, next thing, you have to look for the cross functional team. Okay, so cross functional team means you are going to look for the diversity, you are looking for the collaboration with a different team. And next, if you look for the collaborating the team, you have a different tools are available. So how you can do this work using a tool. Okay, so we have a Slack, we have a Microsoft Team, we have a Jira. So these are the few tools which helps you in terms of doing a collaboration. In the Azure, we have something called Azure boards as well. So Jira is a collaboration tool, and in the Azure we have something called Azure board. So I'm just trying to compare the Jira versus Azure board. Okay, uh, and next, for the collaboration, we have a Slack message, and nowadays if you talk about, we have the one of the lab as well for the collaboration. So complete Microsoft Team, you can integrate with your DevOps. Okay, so if you want to run a pipeline, you want to run something called build, you want to approve, you want to reject, you want to do a code review, everything we have something called connectors available with the different tools. You can go ahead and integrate, and you can track your complete changes from the DevOps into the different tools. Okay, now if you're going to talk about the tools, okay, and we have the different tools available in the market for the monitoring, for the development, for the build. So there are multiple tools which is available, and you can always go ahead and look for the different tools. Okay, so from the bug tracking, from the planning, monitoring, so all those are available into market. Now this slide talks about if you are trying to migrate to the DevOps, if you are moving to the DevOps from the any other tool. Okay, so we have into Azure DevOps, we have a few components. So first is Azure boards. So Azure boards helps you in terms of a planning. So agile planning you will be able to do, you will be able to develop your work item, you will be able to visualize the thing, you can see the dashboard. This is kind of a reporting tool which you can go ahead and assign the work, you can move the work from I am from the new to assigned to I'm doing, and then it is done. So there are multiple steps which you will be able to move your work item into the Azure boards. Next, you have Azure Pipeline. Azure Pipeline is having two things. One is a build pipeline, another is a release pipeline. Okay, so this is the you are going to create something called continuous integration and continuous deployment from the Azure pipeline. Okay, it supports a Kubernetes container, Kubernetes, web app deployment, application deployment, whatever you think you can go ahead and automate. You can run a PowerShell script, you can write that into the YAML script. So all those things you will be able to do using Azure pipeline. Then you have Azure repos. Azure repos is going to help you to store a code, okay, to make a versioning, to maintain a versioning, to do a check-in checkout kind of a stuff, to merging a strategy. All those things will be helped by the Azure repos. Then you have Azure artifacts. So if you are used in the development, like if you have used a NuGet package, or if you have used npm package, like I want to use some of the features, like you can say that external features. So basically we can go ahead and look for the something called packages from the market, and we incorporate those packages into our code, so that we'll be able to use that functionality into your code. So we can go ahead and create our DLL, we can deploy that DLL as a something called artifact, and that can be used within the project or within the organization. You can share between the different projects as well. Then we have Azure test plan, which is helping you in terms of a testing solution. So that is also available. So in Azure DevOps, you have mainly this five, you can say the five modules, which you can go ahead and utilize that into your application. Azure repo, if you talk about Azure repo, if you try to compare that Azure repo, you have a Git, you have a Bitbucket, clear case, or if you have used SVN. So these are the competitor of your Azure repos for the storing the code and maintaining the repository here. This is the screenshot from the this is the slide talks about the GitHub. Okay, so just now we talk about the Azure DevOps, so same thing is available with the GitHub. It's trying to compare with the GitHub. Okay, so GitHub also having something called code space, so where you have the collaboration is available, like you can go ahead and do the collaboration. We have a repos where you can go ahead and store your repository or projects. Both is available, private and public project, which you can go ahead and host. Action is similar to your build and release pipeline. Basically, you can go ahead and build and release and deploy into the applications. That is called action. That is called GitHub action as well. Next, you have artifacts, so you can go ahead and deploy something called your packages. Okay, so if you want to something called deploy your packages into the application, you can go ahead and use those in using the artifacts. Another thing which you have a security, where you do a code review, vulnerability scan, and other things which you can go ahead and do the code scanning for your application. So the GitHub also having the similar feature which the Azure DevOps offers you. Now, if you are going to talk about the designing and authentication and access strategy for your DevOps, okay, so you can go ahead and integrate your DevOps with your different Active Directory. You can go ahead and integrate with your Microsoft tools to integrate your for the personal access token and other security which you can go ahead and implement with your DevOps. You can have a level of access. We have a groups which you can go ahead and assign the permission for your DevOps, so you can maintain some different authentication and security strategy for your DevOps if you want to implement into your DevOps. So this is talks about the more into the security into your application. This is talking about the different tools. So if you want to migrate your application to the Azure DevOps, so there are some tools. So both Azure DevOps and Git can be integrated. Okay, so you can go ahead and integrate your DevOps and the GitHub. Okay, and there is something called tool called Solidify offers you tool to move your Jira to the Azure DevOps. So Jira, as I told you, this is something called collaboration tool, which you can go ahead and maintain your all those strategies and the something called you can go ahead and design the board. You can assign the work item. So those things you can migrate using a Solidify from the Jira to DevOps. Okay. There are other third-party tools like Bugzilla is available, ClearCase is available. These are the things which is available to for your management and other things which is available into the market. Okay, this is again talking about something called there are different tool which you can use. So there are other tool like Apache Gmeter is an open source tool written in Java, designed for the functional test. So those things you can go ahead and integrate. So always we doesn't talk about whatever tools is available in Azure, so we always offer that whatever is available in marketplace, you can go ahead and incorporate those tool into your application as well. So you are just not only restricted with the Azure resources. You can always look for the marketplace, and marketplace gives you something called extension, and extension can be incorporated with your DevOps in order to use a different tool which is available into the market. Now, if you talk about the licensing, so this is the licensing URL which is available. So Azure DevOps licensing, you can go ahead and buy individual licensing. Sometimes they offer a free as well. Earlier it was using giving some of the free. Nowadays they have stopped giving a free, so you have to just everything you have to go and integrate with your Azure, and then basically how many times you run the code, that will be get charged for you. Then you have a GitHub pricing. So you have Azure DevOps pricing and the GitHub pricing, both is available. Other than that, you have something called parallel processing, and also if you want to buy something, I want to run a 10 parallel job, then you have to pay for some additional amount and other things which you have to always pay here. Okay,